I'm Nicole Johnston, and you're listening to 7am. This year, a documentary filmed at a school in Russia won an Academy Award. Its hero, a primary school teacher, Pasha Talankin. After Russia invaded Ukraine, Mr Talankin found himself trapped in the job of teaching propaganda to students. He filmed it all until he was forced to flee the country. And what he captured offers a rare glimpse into Putin's Russia. Today, Andrei Soldatov, a Russian investigative journalist who also fled the country, on how the Kremlin is indoctrinating kids. It's Wednesday, April 22. Andrei, first of all, the film that we just mentioned, Mr Nobody Against Putin, it was a rare look into what's really going on inside Russia. So how is the Kremlin's propaganda now part of the school curriculum for kids?
Well, unfortunately, it started even before the war commenced in 2022. We got the Russian military present and getting more and more active in Russian schools. And the Russian army formed several special organizations to talk to kids. And for several years, we've seen kids in uniforms praising the Russian military.
I feel proud. We have to march to follow in our grandfather's footsteps. They fought for our homeland. If it comes to that, we'll fight for it too.
Of course, it's closely tied with the history of the Russian war against the Nazis during the Second World War. So it's a huge thing because this is essentially the Russian ideology these days. It's not only about lessons. They have these lessons, they call it the lessons about the important things. But also they have visits of the veterans. And while back in the day, they invited veterans of the Second World War. But these days, they invite the veterans of what they call the special military operation in Ukraine.
We threw grenades and fired dummy shots.
People who are fresh from the battlefield, they are told to come to schools and to talk to kids, sometimes to teach them how to use weapons. And of course, it is an indoctrination. And
I was reading they even have a grade for ideological conformity these days.
Yes, exactly. And the problem is that the Kremlin understands very clearly that there are no other real ideology in Russia these days. Nobody obviously believes in communism, and that's long gone. There is no official ideology. It's prohibited by the Russian constitution. So the place is taken by the idea of the Russian military might, that the Russian army has been always on the good side of history, and now the Russian army is fighting evil in Ukraine.
So what impact is all of this having on the kids?
I think it's a bit more complicated than it seems, because, of course, there are kids who might believe in this propaganda, it's obvious. But in countries like Russia, where repressions are part of an everyday life, we can say, what people find in these lessons is basically directions. What you need to say if you want to stay on the good sides of the Kremlin, what you can discuss and you cannot. So it's mostly about directions. It's some sort of guidelines of how you can behave. And obviously, for lots of people who do not want to become troublemakers, they just accept it, and it became a second nature.
Andrei, the internet used to be one of the last places left in Russia where you could try and get around this state control using VPNs and Telegram. But since the 1st of April, Telegram was totally blocked. The VPNs are now being shut down gradually. So what is going on in that space in Russia?
Unfortunately, right now there's offensive on the internet, and internet freedom seems to be unstoppable. It's not only about an attack on a particular service like Telegram you mentioned. It's about an introduction of a completely new system.
Russia has unveiled what it's calling a super app that combines messaging and other functions. Max, as the app is called, describes itself as a new digital platform for solving everyday problems. It's owned by a Kremlin-friendly oligarch.
I would say its an ambition is to change social behavior. For instance, instead of blacklists, websites and services blocked by the authorities because they are considered to be dangerous or harmful, now we have the concept of the whitelists. So you can basically use or access only the services which are approved by the authorities. And it's very damaging, of course, because we all understand that the whitelists are, by definition, are limited and short.
In Russia, digital controls are tightening. People can get fined simply for a search query on the internet for materials branded as extremist by the Ministry of Justice.
It's also about constant problems with mobile internet. A big problem not only in regions as it was before, but now in big cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg. And it affects everyday life. You cannot actually pay by your card, you cannot order a taxi, you cannot use lots of things online. And of course, it creates a lot of grievances. People are getting very, very frustrated. But at the same time, they understand that they are absolutely defenseless.
So when it comes to the war in Ukraine, what is it these days that Russians are being told about it? And on a street level, are people even really following what's happening there?
Well, it's an interesting thing because on the one hand, of course, the official propaganda is very strong and everywhere you have some discussion about the war, and the Kremlin is, for instance, is promoting the idea that during the next elections to the Russian parliament, the State Duma, veterans of the war would be given an opportunity to come into the Russian parliament, and it's being praised by Kremlin propagandists. On the other hand, we see that lots of people do not want to think about the war because it's so uncomfortable, because you feel, first of all, that you have no say in what your country is doing, not only in Ukraine, but also in your country. And the best way, it's some sort of psychological defense or protection mechanism. You just try not to think about it. And the usual thing you counter when you talk to someone who now is in the country, let's not talk about it. It's too uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it. We don't think about it. So we live our lives day by day, and that's it.
Coming up, how Putin is paying for frontline soldiers. Andrei, your real specialty as a journalist is in Russia's security and intelligence services. And in 2023, we had that failed mutiny attempt within the armed services led by Yevgeny Prigozhin.
The uprising by the head of the Wagner mercenary group put the country on a knife edge. But with a convoy of his fighters closing in on Moscow, Yevgeny Prigozhin seemingly blinked.
But these days it does appear that Putin is totally entrenched and a palace coup would look or appear impossible these days. Is that how you'd read it also?
Well, it looks like Putin learned some lessons from 2023. And first of all, the problem is that Russia has some people within the army and the security services who are not extremely happy with what is going on the battlefield. Most of these people would want this war to become bigger, not smaller, unfortunately. But even these people now, they do not have a real platform to talk about their ideas.
Now, one of Russia's best-known human rights campaigners, Oleg Orlov, has been jailed for 2.5 years by a court in Moscow. Mr. Orlov, who is 70, was found guilty of repeatedly discrediting the Russian army.
Most of the people who were critical of the way the war was conducted are either in jail or killed.
Vladimir Kara-Murza was found guilty on alleged charges of treason for criticizing the war in Ukraine in what was widely viewed as a show trial. The opposition activist has spent years speaking out against the Russian president and even survived 2 poisonings.
You cannot really come together and discuss what is going on because everybody knows that the FSB, the major Russian security service, is omnipresent within the military, and not only within the military. It also goes for the government, for the ministries and federal agencies. Almost everywhere you see someone being arrested and accused of something, like deputy ministers, governors, deputy governors. It's a huge thing. And what it creates a climate of fear. And people distrust each other. The first basic thing, if you want to organize something like a coup d'etat, you need to have some trust. And this is exactly what is lacking these days.
Now, Putin's always made it very clear that his ambition is to restore the greatness of Russia. But with the world focused on the Middle East, Trump in power, do you think Putin actually thinks he's now getting what he wanted? Because NATO's divided, we have an expanded Russia, he has a freer hand in Ukraine, higher oil prices. Or is it more complicated?
I think it's a bit more complicated because, yes, on the one hand, it looks like, we have the US president attacking NATO. This is exactly what Putin would love to hear. And of course, with oil prices and problems, it creates more opportunities for Russian oil companies, and we already see that. We see how some really big countries are getting back to talking to Russian companies because they understand that they cannot get oil from the Middle East. And it's all very beneficial for Russia.
Around a quarter of the world's oil supply comes from Gulf countries, much of that now impacted by the Iran war. But almost 12% more comes from Russia. To keep that flowing, the US has already lifted sanctions on some Russian oil.
On the other hand, the Russian military is not extremely happy because, look at it in perspective. You see that Putin already abandoned several of his allies. I mean, he did almost nothing to help the president of Syria, Bashar Assad. And now, apparently, Putin is doing nothing or very little to protect his ally in Iran. So yes, there are lots of people who think Putin could have done more to help Iran, and it is humiliating. The good thing for Putin, he could, at least for now, disregard these people because he has such a good system of repressions.
And Andrei, what about the military? Because this month there's a major deployment of Russian soldiers to the front. There's been these mobilizations going on for years to try and get Russians to join the military. It's often referred to as a meat grinder on the front line. So is it getting harder and harder for the state to get new recruits? And why would people want to join?
Well, unfortunately, what we see is that there are still some people who want to join the army because of money. And especially in poor regions, it's completely changed the picture because it's not only about soldiers and being paid, it's also about military contracts. Lots of Russian military facilities are not in Moscow, but in the regions, and now they're getting money because of the war. So it's beneficial for these people. On the other hand, in the army, if you talk to people who are, fighting now, there is this huge feeling of fatigue. People do not understand why the progress is so slow. And also, you have this problem with the Kremlin propaganda, because the Kremlin made such a huge effort trying to compare what is going now with what took place in the 1940s during the war with the Germans. Well, of course, you cannot help but compare the successes of the Red Army back then and the very small successes of the Russian army now. They have been fighting around one village for months and months and months, and it is humiliating, and it's also betrays that actually you don't understand what you are fighting for and how long you can fight for this particular village.
Andrei, last month you were sentenced in absentia to 4 years in a Russian penal colony for your reporting on the war. Now, luckily, you live in London and you're safe. But I've read your book where you talk about your old friends in Russia, some of them journalists, they're still living there. And they basically appear to have taken the side of Putin. So why do you think that is? Is it pure survival? And how hard is it for you to reconcile that these people who were once your close friends are now on the side of the Kremlin?
It's a very difficult question, to be honest, because we've used to be very close, and at some point, most of them chose to side with the Kremlin. And I would say it's not only about fear and survival, it's also about ambition. Most of these people are extremely ambitious, and they believe that in a country like Russia, you can achieve something only if you serve the dictator, and they chose that. We also already see, me and my co-author, Irina Borogan, that unfortunately after the book was published, our friends, and of course we sent the book to them because we believed it would be fair, they got even more aggressive. And some of them actually cheered a sentence I got and asking for more, maybe for high treason charges. So I don't see any space, any room for reconciliation right now. It feels like a real civil war.
Andrei, it's been fascinating to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also in the news, the federal court has been told Woolworths used subtle magic to mislead customers into thinking the price of pantry staples had been slashed when it had not. The ACCC's case against the grocery giant kicked off yesterday. Like Coles, which faced court in February, Woolies is accused of faking discounts by artificially increasing product prices, then lowering them and advertising it under its Prices Dropped program. Woolworths refutes the claim. And police are investigating reports of trespassing after fugitive gunman Desi Freeman's final hideout was filmed by YouTubers. Video has emerged from inside the shipping container where Freeman made his last stand against police before he was shot dead last month. Freeman spent 7 months on the run after killing 2 police officers and wounding a third in Victoria's High Country last year. I'm Nicole Johnston, and this is 7am. Thanks for listening.